I think you'll notice that we've designed this dialogue today to be exactly that. It's meant to be a dialogue. What we've got in the room we are not vast numbers of people, but the right people to have these conversations with the decision makers in the various value chains, and we want to keep this very interactive. So with presentations, we've also got discussions like this, where we're going to keep it conversational, and we'd love your input and your questions right at the end. So please continue to contribute via Slido. And with that, and I think to Dr. Ryan's point about this being a local issue, but also a global issue, and how much of that plastic is located internationally at source and then winds up on our beaches, it's important to understand how this is being tackled globally. Craig, you, the previous president of Dow Sub-Saharan Africa, you've been seconded to the Alliance to End Plastic Waste as a senior advisor and the CEO. So just give us a bit of context around the Alliance and the objective of the Alliance.
No, absolutely, and thanks to Safripol and Nico and the management team for driving such a dialogue and bringing such interesting speakers, and especially Dr. Ryan. I was thrilled and typed away some of those statistics. Data has been part of the problem, and having good arguments. We're all scientists or some technical background, and when we provide that type of data, we get, it sounds like we're protecting an evil because of the sound arguments. But there are four fundamental facts that perhaps preempted the emphasis of who the Alliance is and why the Alliance came about. And so probably in the absence of, sorry, Mayor, in the absence of any presentation, I probably would like to just go through some of those four facts, because they resonate well with what Dr. Ryan said, but it's also forming the foundation as to why the Alliance has come together and who is the Alliance and what has the Alliance succeeded thus far. And so the first fact is 80% of the ocean plastic comes from land-based sources, 80% of the ocean plastic. 90% come from just 10 rivers. Okay, 6 of those rivers are in Asia Pacific. 2 of them are in Africa. So we already know where the problem is. You know, it's just about the imagination to go out there and address the solution. But the more concerning point is that 8 million tons of plastic is leaking into the ocean in some form or another on an annual basis. That's 16 to 17 world-scale polyethylene plants or plastic plants. And that's just switching them on and letting them just dump into the ocean. 8 million tons. However, 75% comes from waste that remains unallocated. So the consumer who's adopted a purchase and dispose type behavior versus a purchase and reuse or a purchase and recycle type behavior. So that's a big shift that we're trying to work on. But 25% of that 8 million leaks into the ocean after it's been collected. So these poorly managed dump sites, landfills, in a lot of the cases where I'm based out of in Southeast Asia, some of these dump sites are hundreds of meters from the ocean, not capped, poorly managed. You wait for a nice wind, or you wait for a nice rain cloud, which happens fairly often, as I've been experiencing, and immediately that is pushed directly from one water source to another into the ocean. The second fact is that over half the land-based plastic waste leakage just comes from 5 countries. So half of that is 5 countries. It's China, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. And that's probably forming why we're focusing as the Alliance so heavily on Southeast Asia and what's next. But I just want to put it into an Africa context. I mean, Africa is the second largest polluting continent. And so we do have a waste management challenge here in Africa. The third point is, which is more less on the numbers, because whilst the facts are frightening, the statistics are equally alarming. So the third point is research has shown that most significant sources of unmanaged plastic waste and the key aspects of the solution. So we know where the unmanaged plastics are. We already know what the solutions are. It's just a matter of making it commercially viable, making sure the technology can be scaled up with speed into those areas. So we know where the problems are, and we need to go out there and address it. And then the fourth and remaining one, and then I'll go into discussing a little bit more what the Alliance is doing. Replacing plastics in packaging and consumer products with alternative materials could have an environmental cost escalation of nearly 4 times. So we have to be very, very careful of the unintended consequences of this shift away from one sustainable or one very, very prudent or the most effective packaging into another alternative, because the environmental burden 4 times. And just to back up some of those statistics, so the plastic industry today is roughly around about 400 million tons. It's expected by 2025 to gain another 100 million tons. And so that 8 million tons that is leaking into the ocean, if we don't start to come up with great solutions to solving this problem, we're as an industry are on the line. Our license to operate may be seriously challenged. But more so, we've got to start to turn this problem into an opportunity. And so what we've seen is that this 8 million tons is close to 120 billion tons of value if you direct it and address it differently. And if you can liberate certain continents like Africa in supporting this $120 billion, that $120 billion can be better directed towards infrastructure or healthcare, etc. And so these 4 facts are probably the underpinning approach that the Alliance has, why it has formed. And the Alliance is a CEO-led initiative. Okay. My former CEO from the Dow side spends up to 25 to 30% of his personal time and capacity on this problem, like all the other CEOs that have joined the Alliance. The issue as to why the Alliance came together just 1 year ago is because whether you're a plastic producer or a plastic user, there is a gap on how the solution is being addressed. And we feel that coming together as an alliance, that gap can be rather transferred into something where we can scale up and we can go with speed on solving this particular problem. So right now there's 50 members, and those 50 members over a 4 to 5 year period have committed $1.5 billion. So for the first time in my life, I get to spend $1.5 billion versus being expense constrained, which is a nice opportunity. However, that $1.5 billion is going to be focused in 4 particular areas. Okay, the first area is going to be in infrastructure, okay, where infrastructure is lacking and is required. The second area is going to be in innovation. I mean, there's a lot of embedded innovation and technology that's ready to be commercialized, but there's also some redesign on the packaging types that can take place. The third one is on education, which is fundamental, and it's not only just education, it's education and engagement that has to require, and the fourth one being these high-vis but highly effective beach cleanups, or cleanups just in general. So it's been 1 year. We celebrated our 1 year anniversary in January at Davos, at the WEF, and if you would like a link to that anniversary report, more than happy to share it with you, but also equally to share some of the printed material on this topic.
Fascinating. So already in a year, have had this 1.5 billion rand committed. You've got objectives that are clearly defined, and you now going out and driving those. Have you started implementing these? How are these objectives being implemented? Yeah. So the Alliance, with respect to industry associations, isn't an industry association, and it isn't a lobby group. The Alliance is essentially we have the breadth of the value chain from the memberships, but we also have access to the skills and the expertise of the value chain. And the value chain is contributing and seconding experts to go out there and manage specific projects. So 80 to 90% of the Alliance organization is project managers from the member companies in skills and expertise in addressing municipal solid waste management. Because if you're going to solve the 12% problem, you have to consider the 88% problem, which is the other organic waste and municipal problem. So we really are looking at this at a project base. We've spent the last year trying to establish project discipline in these critical areas. So there's four pillars that I had highlighted. And now we're about to go public on our PACE 2020 goals, which is project acceleration, communication, and engagement around the specific program areas and the locations of these projects. And I see a huge opportunity for a lot of these program areas to be celebrated and implemented here in Africa, and we can certainly talk about that. But specifically on those program areas, I just want to get into the 9 program areas because I think they resonate quite nicely with what Dr. Ryan was saying. But more importantly, I think these are program areas that if
if you're wondering when is the alliance coming to Africa, well, it's here. I had to be careful what I wished for. I'm now embedded in the alliance. But these 9 particular program areas is these coordinated cleanup programs. Fundamental, it's high vis. We have to be showing that we're doing good. We have to prevent riverbound waste at the source, as the doctor had highlighted. Sorting and collection systems is a fundamental hurdle in developing markets. And so we have to figure out what is the business case and how do we get societal or the communities involved in addressing that. Integrated waste management solutions at a city level and also at a rural level. We can't go in there and speak to Jakarta or Manila and say this is how you address the issue, because they have a whole series of other issues. However, when we go into rural areas and the community is more actively engaged and they really want a cleaner environment, we have an audience that we can work very, very close there. Integrated waste management, advanced chemical and recycling technologies. These are readily available. How do we bring these to the markets, and how do we scale it and make commercial sense? Product and end-use markets, so redesigning the packaging as well as reusing or alternative industries that the plastic can be deployed into. Collaborating with governments and agencies. One thing I've definitely had the pleasure of learning more about is just how many NGOs or government agencies there are in the world and how complicated they are at local levels. So really working collectively and trying to help them achieve some of their goals, and more also on the other side, educate them and impart some of the fine wisdom. And then the last 2 areas is incubating new technologies and business models. This is a $120 billion opportunity, not a $120 billion problem. And the last but not least, and I really like the, you can throw a dinghy in the ocean and you can see where your waste ends up going. We have a global information platform. It's going to be the Uber of waste, if you kind of imagine it that way, where we really want to know where the waste is. And where is it generating? Because by knowing where it is and where it's been generated at source, we can have laser focused projects and programs in those particular areas.
And I like that thinking, Craig. It's viewing a problem as a potential resource and opportunity. And I had in the mining industry the pleasure of visiting a very advanced wastewater treatment facility in Witbank in Amalakhleni. It was driven by industry. It was taking acid mine drainage from the various coal mines around the area and turning it into potable water. There's a very technical solution, reverse osmosis, adding gypsum or getting gypsum out, and really turned it into a potable solution that fed back into the Witbank municipality. So changing that mindset, viewing it as a resource is critical. Where exactly does Africa and South Africa fit into these global aspirations and plans?
Yes, since we're among friends, and since I have a strong bias towards Africa, carry the accent, I've been strongly advocating that this isn't just a Southeast Asia approach. Yes, Southeast Asia is a hotspot globally. However, it's not something that you sequentially sit there and say, well, let's solve Southeast Asia's problems and we'll just copy and paste it into Africa. This is a problem, or this is an approach that we have to go in parallel. All the systems and solutions that we're doing in Southeast Asia, China, and India are ideally replicable in Africa. The fundamental common areas or challenges that we have in developing markets, so whether it's Southeast Asia or Africa, is exactly the same. It's the lack of infrastructure. And there is a behavioral aspect, which is the education, but just the infrastructure. We heard the statistics on just how much, even if there is infrastructure on landfills, just how poorly managed they are, but it's also the behavior aspect to create infrastructure, create a business model, create employment. I think activating the informal sector in this area is the biggest opportunity to unleash a solution to this prevailing problem.
And just to stay on that infrastructure issue for a while longer, to better understand who takes the leading role, because very often you talk about infrastructure as a public good, but we're seeing increasingly, certainly in the South African context, the fiscus is constrained. So where we went to kind of an on-balance sheet approach to infrastructure with the likes of Transnet, borrowing in the market, issuing bonds, and then funding a build program, or Eskom, that space has closed. Yep. So now we move into a more public-private partnership model. Is that the way you see this evolving in the waste space as well?
It has to. I mean, today we're operating in a linear economy, and if you truly want to close that loop, the the lowest hanging fruit is the collaborative opportunity. So collaboration is absolutely key. And so we've got to work with government. A program that we're working on is with the Global Resiliency Network. So they're looking at the top 100 cities around the world. How do you look at cities around water, it's being water stressed or waste stressed or even plastic stressed, and come up with specific programs? In these programs, these 3-year programs, so each of our projects are 3-year based. So we bring the skill sets of the value chain in a focused manner, backed up with large money. Okay, so money does not become a problem in this instance, but we train the local champions up on how to govern this and manage this once we hand over the project. It is if not the key opportunity around collaboration. And one particular area is this isn't a plastic producer quorum that we so have. This is a plastic producer, converter, brand owner, and retailer opportunity. That collaboration, that's what I'm calling business. At the governmental level, we need collaboration. At the NGO and advisor or stakeholder levels, we also need collaboration. This is not an us or them. We've got to bridge this gap between, those that make and those that use, because this is, the unintended consequences of the consumer making a different choice is far greater. That 120 billion, 4 times multiple on that is the environmental impact that we're going to see.
That is serious. There's a question from Slido here. Is the Alliance looking into ways of recycling plastics materials that are difficult to recycle?
Yeah.
Is that in the innovation pillar, I'd imagine?
Correct. So the way the Alliance has been working is we work in 2 specific programs. So we've got 4 pillars, 9 focus areas, but we've also got the way we apply the 1.5 billion. 1.5 billion is broken up into, $500 million is going to go into, trap, collect, separate, sort, and another $1 billion is going to go into how do you treat, recycle, circulate, and those aspects. In that second part, technically and scientifically, we can do what needs to be done. However, we need, in the more difficult materials, we need to control the input, both by quality and cost, and we need to have a market for the output. And it has to have a cost and a quality component. So this notion around EPR or this notion around funding needs to be actively looking at to enable the business case, because right now the technology and the capability is there in those difficult markets or difficult material compositions. You waste to energy and other systems are equally opportunistic in these markets. So waste to energy, if you have a cement industry or you in the next 10, 20 years you're looking at building a lot of infrastructure, buildings, houses, etc., or new highways. I mean, to burn fossil fuel or to borrow fossil fuel to get the kiln temperatures up. There is a reason why some of these more mature markets like the Nordics or the Germanys or the Switzerlands or even Singapore don't have a waste issue, is because they have some incinerators in place so that they can activate this very low-cost available waste source and take it into an opportunistic value add. Now, incineration worldwide also carries some challenges, and there are some skeptics, but in the right environment, they do work. But to substitute, if you are an energy-dependent country, we find that probably those countries are probably looking at how do we use the energy to go to more chemical recycling and those other areas. But if you are an energy-dependent country, you probably want to come up with free access to a fuel stream that can probably be used very, very attractively in your market. Plus, the difficult polymers or the mixed feed polymers, as well as some wet weight, you can get some very readily available, yes, through controlled environment, cheap pyrolysis units, where you can do it either a local municipal level, where you can provide a diesel or a burning fuel to a domestic market during some winter conditions, or to generate electricity in other senses. So these solutions and opportunities in a energy-stressed, so electricity-stressed environment with a little bit of imagination, you can rapidly get into solutions in South Africa. And South Africa, by the way, should be leading the narrative in approaching this.
No, definitely with our energy stress situation, to put it politely. The actual alliance itself, are the plastic companies and those that import their products into South Africa part of the alliance? And what portion of the alliance's budget do you expect to be spent on Africa and in South Africa?
In Africa. So today we have a lighthouse project in Ghana that really has taken a collection or a trap collection scheme, and they've been separating and sorting it, and then they've just been breaking it into 23 chains that then get sold out. What we've now done is we've funded an extruder. They're now able to make bricks or roofs or houses. So we've really enabled that part of the value chain. Putting more of this funding in the front end part of the waste management value chain in Africa, I'm looking really seriously at that opportunity. The membership base, from an Africa perspective, we've got high interest from the Safripol side, so thanks, Nico. But SASL is one of the founding members, and so SASL has committed. SASL is also putting a lot of pressure on how do you get more of an Africa tilt. A lot of the global majors that are coming out of Europe are asking for an Africa tilt. So we are being directed by a lot of the opinions and the opportunities that Africa presents. So the idea is probably in the next 18 months to 24 months is to have a more broader Africa play with at least 2 lighthouse projects in South Africa by year end, one in East Africa, one in West Africa, and North Africa. I think it's going to tilt more towards Egypt. Why? Because the Nile is one of those top 10 sources of pollutants, and so is the River Niger, also equally important. So really stopping the waste at source is where we're focusing on.
To Dr. Ryan's earlier slide about population growth in Africa, 4 billion over the next 70 years, it really places Africa at the very center of a mass consumer market that's only going to be contributing to that waste challenge. With regards to leveraging what the alliance is doing, this is my question here. Obviously, you've got a war chest of $1.5 billion now, but there's an increasing allocation by funds with ESG mandates, sovereign wealth funds that are focusing in this area, to go out and deploy that capital in areas that are showing high returns on effort. Is there any approach to try and crowd in any of those funds to create a leverage that $1.5 billion that you now have at your disposal?
Yeah, actually, so the $1.5 billion, and you mentioned BlackRock and others earlier on in your statements, the $1.5 billion we see as catalytic capital. So it'll be matched by governments, but equally the private equity tilt into sustainable solutions, and the penalties they're also providing by if you don't have these sustainable approach. So access to capital, if you do have a good sustainable and a good notion, is going to attract more funding. So that catalytic value that we're doing in one of the current execution projects that we have right now is what we call plug and play. So we already know all the technically or capable technologies out there that are just missing out on the business case, so they're all commercially marginal. Can the alliance help these get into, help it get through that hockey stick curve that a lot of these technologies can be activated fairly quickly. On the other side, we're looking at the innovative side, where we are looking at private equity matching a lot of our funding, and we're holding a lot of. We have had 2 already, one in LA, and the other one is going to take place in Paris, and we have another one in Singapore, where there's going to be a lot of open proposals on projects that need to be funded, and we're going to be allocating a lot of capital into those areas. So we've been receiving a lot of high interest in these areas.
Very exciting.
Yep.
Now, on the Africa view of what's happening in Africa, and I know Rwanda have taken quite a proactive approach, banning some issues, some plastics. Does the Alliance have a view on the efforts in Rwanda?
So one thing the Alliance is steering away from is policy. because what we don't want to then be doing is tilting into one of the earlier questions is, are you a lobby group? Is the plastic industry lobbying? What we really want to be is fact and science and be catalytic in our approach, and then bring expertise in lead areas and projects. So in terms of policy and getting involved in that, no, we're not picking winners and losers, and we're not trying to direct governments. What we are trying to do is convert this 8 million tons into a $120 billion opportunity. And so that a Rwanda, who's landlocked, wants to be the innovation capital or the Singapore equivalent of Africa, could it be a technology hub for recycling technologies and those? So with President Kagame, that would be the opportunity. What we are impressed with is the mandate on cleanups. So I think each citizen commits half a day or a full day. Even he does it in the streets of Rwanda and tidying up his or her space. So there is a new behavior shift that has taken place, and people are happy. I certainly enjoy traveling into Rwanda. If you haven't done it, it is, if not the cleanest place in Africa, by all means, and it's impressive to see. Now, I think what they need to be doing is jumping on this opportunity and being the science house of this opportunity.
Yeah,
in the absence of, I mean, this is a country the size of Lesotho, landlocked, small population. Where is its point of differentiation can be? It shouldn't be looking at trying to replicate a value chain that is established globally. It should be looking at its strengths and, quite frankly, its weaknesses, and then trying to capitalize on that.
Craig, on that note, I'm going to call it. We're back on time for the morning session. We're going to break until 11 o'clock. So Craig Arnold, head of the Global Alliance to End Plastic Waste, thank you very much for sharing some thoughts into the formation of the Alliance at the one-year anniversary. It sounds like you've already got a lot on the go, a lot of projects. You must be a very busy man.
Yep.